part of my thinking for discussing universal intro today involved um, leveraging what we already understand from chapters 6 and 8. Here it'll be specifically chapter 6. So let's read the argument together, and then let's see if we can drill down into the material that with which we're already comfortable. So line 1 asserts, everything is either small or medium. Line 2 says, nothing is small, or everything is not small. And the conclusion is, therefore, everything is medium. And, if you want to see this play out in Tarski's world, you could just open up the program, right, and build a world in which sentence 1 is true, and then build a world in which, and then adjust that world, rather, so that sentence 2 is true, and then see what results, and you'll notice that it's the conclusion. Another way to go, which is the counterexample method that we used way back in chapter 2, see if you can build a world in which the conclusion is false, but the premises are true. You'll find out you can't do it. Now let's drill down into chapter 6. If we didn't have the quantifiers, right, we would have the following. We could say A is small or medium. It's not the case that A is small, and then our conclusion, so A is medium, right? And we know that the way that we proceed is going to be either a proof by cases, a disjunction elimination, or a negation intro, right? Either one will do. So we want to think about effectively nesting this thinking within the context of the quantified sentences. So that's one of the approaches you can take. But now let's talk about strategy. We know that when our conclusion is a universal, our strategy is universal intro. And the fact that the conclusion is a universal that is not outside of or does not govern an arrow, a conditional, the universal intro that we use is the one on the left, right? Where we say, well, let's assume there's an object named A. And what I want to infer from that object named A is that it's medium. So that I can say I've just proven from a randomly chosen, arbitrarily chosen, or hypothetically named entity A that it's medium, which means that anything I could name is medium, which is to say, therefore, everything is medium. Right? And remember, the rule that we've got here, and I didn't box up the A in the shorthand version of the rule sheet that I gave you, but you know that the Fitch program tells us that by using the drop-down menu and boxing up the A, which it does automatically, right, tells us that we are assuming there is an object named A, right? And then we're going to infer properties of A. Okay. One of the things that you then want to do is think about dismantling what you're given, right? So it's always a good idea as soon as you can do it. It may end up being the case that you can be more efficient in your elimination of the universal quantifier by doing that somewhere in, let's say, a nested subproof. But by and large, think about eliminating your quantifier, your universal quantifier, as soon as possible, so that you've got the sentences in a shape that allows you to think about how you're going to proceed. So take a look at lines 4 and 5. If you know that you want to conclude that A is medium, you can either assume that it's false that A is medium, right? Generate a contradiction and exit the subproof, introducing there, as a result, the negation. So you can use the negation intro route, right? And you know that a contradiction is going to occur between what is now line 5 and the left side of line 4, right? So you say, okay, I could go that route. Still another route is to dismantle, because you're going to have to do that anyway. Dismantle the disjunction where the goal is, remember, what is now line 11, A is medium. Now, if you're concerned about line 10, because now you're thinking, wait a minute, line 10 is an outlier, it doesn't belong here. I hope that you say, oh, but I do know where it belongs. Okay, let me do this before we move on. Hold on, I wanna get our, okay, good. I can see everybody now. Quick question before we move on. If you don't mind, can you give me a thumbs up if you say, yep, got it, love it, saw it in advance?
Got it.
Good. Mia, you're moving too slow. Okay, awesome, awesome. How many folks are saying, okay, it's not so much that I got it in advance and thought, Mia, you're moving too slow. I got it as we were working it. I might have been kind of right there along with you. Anybody feeling that way? Okay. So if that's the case, you're in either case, obviously in the first case, you're in good shape. In the latter case, you're still in good shape. I think maybe what you'll want to do is just, keep drilling exercises as much as you can. I think for most of us, it's going to be the case that, little drilling chunks a day, as opposed to huge drilling chunks like once or twice a week, is what's gonna pay off, give you the biggest payoff, rather. Okay, so do me a huge favor. Tell me, line number 4 comes from line number 1. What's the rule?
Elimination of universal.
Excellent. Check it as we go. We know that line number 5 is an assumption. Line number 6, give me I'm gonna go ahead and give you the rule. You give me the line number. Elimination of universal at line
2.
Yay. Check that bad boy off. All right, now do both. Where did we get the contradiction, and what's the rule that we use to justify line 7?
Came from 5 and 6, introduction of contradiction.
Wonderful. How about line 8?
Elimination of contradiction from line 7.
Wonderful. And then line 10. Don't be shy.
It's a repetition from
reiteration, of line 9. And then we should have done this first at line 11, but the way that I had talked about the procedure, the process is such that we ended up not doing that. We've got our disjunction elimination, right? And is it fair to say, folks, that, there's a fair amount of work that we're doing here that you already know from, in this case, chapter 6, right? So we're just building on that. We're leveraging that. All right, how about this one? Okay. Go ahead and take a moment to read to yourself the premises and the conclusion. And then let's talk about our strategy. Okay, so line number 1 reads as follows. Everything is a cube or a tet. Line number 2 says that everything that is a cube is medium and that's a tet is large. And our conclusion is, therefore, everything that is either medium or large. And this is an argument form that's often called constructive dilemma, where the antecedent of each of the conditionals is affirmed, but within a disjunction. And then that results in the disjunction of each of the consequents. Right? So take a look at line 2. Let's go ahead and just focus for the moment on each of the arrows. So if cube, then medium, and then line 1 says could be a cube, which means then it could be medium. And then the second arrow says if it's a tet, it's large. And then line 1 says could be a tet, so it could be large. Now, remember what we've got in our conclusion. We've got a universally quantified sentence. It is not a universally quantified sentence governing an arrow. So our strategy is universal intro. So again, we're going to assume the entity A, and we don't know what properties apply. Right? We don't know if A is a cube, a tet, medium, large, right? What we want to prove is that A is medium or large, so that we can exit the subproof and say, we've just proven that since this hypothetically named entity A is medium or large, anything that we could talk about is medium or large, right? And let's remind ourselves, or let's tell our future selves now what we're saying is our strategy. Check that, yay, okay? Now, we want the sentence medium, A is medium or A is large. So how are we going to work backward to get that? Well, presumably, if we have A as medium, we can introduce the disjunction Or if we have A is large, we can introduce the disjunction, right? So, let's suppose, just for the sake of, right, what we've just said, that we have A is medium, we can introduce the disjunction. Same with A is large, we can introduce the disjunction. Okay, now let's go ahead and start peeling off our quantifiers so that we can see how we're going to get line 7, which is what is currently line 7, A is medium or large, right? So we're just going to instantiate. If everything is a cube or a tet, then A is a cube or a tet. If every cube is medium and every tet is large, then if A is a cube, then it's medium, but if A is a tet, then it's large. Right? Okay, so let's pause for a moment and look at what we've got. Is it fair to say that line 5 needs to be dismantled? Why does it need to be dismantled? Well, because if we're going to get A is medium such that we could introduce the disjunction, or if we're going to get A is large such that we can introduce the disjunction, we need to get at their respective antecedents. A is a cube, A is a tet. But we can't get at their respective antecedents until we address the conjunction. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. And still another thing to consider is the fact that at line 4 we have a disjunction, and we know that when we have disjunctions we eliminate them. Okay. Now we're back at the outside, the end of the subproof that allows us to exit and introduce the universal. Looking at what is now our conclusion of the sequence started at line 3. Come on. Looking at the sequence that started at line 3, what's the strategy that we use to get to line 14? And one way to answer the question is, we'll look at line 13. Yeah, it's empty, but line 13 is the last line at present of a subproof sequence. Moreover, it's the second of a successive subproof sequence. So sorry, Deb, what are you thinking?
Is it disjunction elimination?
Yeah, and why is it disjunction elim as opposed to biconditional intro? Well, because line 14 isn't governed by a biconditional, so we didn't introduce the biconditional. Instead, you're exactly right.
From line 4.
Yeah, really good. Okay, so we've got that set up. Check, make sure we're in good shape. Why is it not a valid application of the rule? Oh, I know why, because we haven't finished yet. Right, what do we want? We want yeah. Okay. So go ahead now and tell me, guys, what are we going to do at line 11? And remember, just as a return to something we discussed quite a while ago, when you've got successive subproof sequences, it's typically the case that you're working the same rule set in each of the sequences.
It's going to be 10A, conditional large A.
Okay, so Deb is looking at line 5, having worked backward from knowing that she needs large A so that she can introduce the disjunction. She's saying, aha, I've got to dismantle the conjunction and then work my conditionally limb. Okay, so let's keep working backwards. So line 13 comes from line 12. Yep. Oops, sorry.
Disjunction intro.
Yep. Good. Keep going. How about line 12?
The conditional elimination from line 11.
Just line 11?
And 10.
Yeah, thank you. Good. And what'd you do from 5 to 11?
The conjunction elimination.
Nice. Okay. Remember parallel sequences, right? How about line 9?
Disjunction elimination.
Wonderful. Or wait,
Right?
line 9, it is the disjunction rule is in effect, but what's making you think of disjunction elim?
Oh, the intro.
Yeah, there you go.
Intro, there you go. Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. All right, how about line 8? Oh, good one, Mia.
Conditional limb from
Yeah.
line 7.
Thank you. Yeah, so conditionally limb. But Dereje, you as Deb did before, you've got an incomplete citation, right?
7 and 6.
Right. So just cast your eyeballs down, if you would, to the bottom of the Fitch window. And we see the note, this rule requires that 2 support steps be cited. And so as a reminder, it's always good to have your rule sheet with you. Just remember you've got to affirm the antecedent. All right, how about line 7?
Disjunction elimination from line 5.
Okay, you're correct that line 5 is the source of line 7. What's the main connective here?
Conjunction.
Conjunction. Yep. Sorry, I was trying to take a pill and I'm not able to get my mouth around words. Yeah, so conjunction elimination. Excellent. And then 4 and 5.
Universal elimination from line 2.
Beautiful.
Universal elimination from line 1.
Awesome. You know, and we've talked about crossing off lines as you use them, and I know that, you know, we can't do that in in Fitch, but, you know, if you jot stuff off to the side and scratch paper, it's not a bad idea to cross out lines. Because if you're working backward the way that we just did, you might forget that, oh yeah, I actually had to dismantle the quantifier from line 1, and I had to dismantle the quantifier from line 2. Okay, confidence level on this one. Yay. Yay, yay. Good. Okay. We ready for more? How about this one? All right, so what am I doing? Oh, okay. So what do we have? 2 universally quantified sentences as our premises, and a universally quantified sentence in the conclusion. And now we have, for today anyway, our first practice exercise with universal intro of the conditional proof variety. So here's the case of the assumptive step involving the hypothetical name, I'm just grabbing A, but applied to the antecedent. And then we want the consequent so that we can exit and say, look, I've just proven that, assuming there is this entity A that's a cube, it follows that A is neither medium nor small. Right? So the difference, as you can see, between conditional intro for the universal and just straight universal intro is that the assumptive name for the conditional variety of the universal, conditional proof variety of the universal intro involves providing the property for the assumed name, the hypothetical name. And that property is always the antecedent of the conditional claim that the universal governs. Okay, and the nice thing that Fitch will do is if I had forgotten my second paren, third technically, but second for the scope of the negation and the scope of the universal quantifier, then Fitch would tell me that. All right, so we're saying universal intro is our setup. Oh, yeah, kind of good to cite the subproof, right? Okay, so now working backward, we want the sentence, it's not the case that A is medium or small. So we could assume the sentence A is medium or small, right? We could set up negation intro. We could also, as we're looking at the 2 premises, we could also see that once we instantiate line 1 and line 2, we'll be able to dismantle the arrows and in a more efficient way get to the conclusion that we want, right? Because if it's true that A is a cube, and if A is a cube, it's large, then it follows A is large, and it also follows that if A is large, then it's not medium or small, and we just had inferred A is large, so it's not medium or small, and then we exit our subproof. So we can start dismantling.
Does this sentence have the same structure as we were working on earlier with the impeachment thing? If you look at it.
Right. So you could so line 2
without the negation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So line 2 says for every x, if x is large, then it's neither medium nor small. You could say if an act is impeachable, then it's both a violation of public trust and a crime. If our interpretation is correct in terms of the question about the violation of public trust. But yeah, nice, Dereje, good. All right, so we've eliminated our universal. Going to do the same thing with the second sentence. Now, if you wanted, you could go ahead and dismantle the arrow at line 4, right? You could say, oh, A is large. That's because if A is a cube, it's large. And in fact, I'm saying A is a cube, right? You could do that first if you wanted. But it's just as legitimate to first dismantle the universal from line 2. Right. And because you've worked backward, setting things up, you're done, right? So go ahead and cite and justify line 6.
Line 3 and 4.
Beautiful.
Elimination of conditional.
Awesome. And line 7.
It's going to be 6 and 5, and it's going to be elimination of conditional.
Yep. Awesome.
One parenthesis.
Yeah.
Thank you. This is one of the reasons why I love Fitch. Fitch says, hey, you messed that up. So, we can complain about some features of it, but it's got these excellent features. Now, as I mentioned before, if you want, you could do, right, you could do this first where you dismantle. Then you can right, then you could dismantle the universal at line 2, right? And then there we go, right? So, there are going to be times within, an existing structure, you've got some wiggle room for how you proceed. That's how you that wiggle room is. It's your judgment, what works for you, what's comfortable for you. All right, so let's see. I think I have a couple more. Let's see where. All right. So here, remember we talked earlier about the rule form Constructive Dilemma. This is a version of its kind of partner proof, Destructive Dilemma. Once again, you're going to be thinking about the setup, which is a universal intro, right? So you're assuming an object. You're going to conclude that that object is neither, A is neither a cube nor a tet, so that everything, and let's say again, we're thinking about the domain of Tarski's world, right? That nothing is or everything is not either a cube or a tet. And by the way, just so that I don't forget when we close out today, as usual, you know, I'm around outside of office hours. Please know that today, and I posted a message to this effect, today I've got to start office hours late, but I will be around from, it should be 4 to 6:30. And then please also know that probably Sunday I will be largely incommunicado, but I'll at least try to check email so that if you have questions, I can address them. But if you want to have a video conference, Sunday might be tricky. And then lastly, for next week, I'd like to make sure that we address any questions you have about the material that we're working on now, the material that we were working on in chapters 6 and 8 and earlier, any questions that you have. And I'd also like to make sure that we spend some time on derivations for arguments involving multiple quantifiers, right? So that we kind of end with a practice bang. Okay, so as I've been yammering on, I bet some of you have been thinking about how to proceed. So is there a suggestion? What do you guys want to do first? You could, for example, say, hey, you know what? I'm going to assume that A is either a cube or a tet. And from that assumption, I'm going to generate a contradiction so I can get out and introduce, not the contradiction, so I can introduce the negation. And then I realize, okay, well, if I'm going to try to infer a contradiction so that I can get out and introduce the negation, but I have a disjunction, looks to me like I'm going to set up a disjunction elim from line 4. And by the way, right, we can see that let me make the come on, I don't know why it does this. Okay, we can see that we haven't even tackled our premises yet. But when we look at our premises, we can see, hello, I've got some implicit contradictions. All right, so what do I want to do? I want to eliminate my quantifiers, right? And then after I eliminate my quantifiers, I want to make sure that I am searching around for my beloved contradictions, right? That will end each of the sequences at what are now lines 7 and 10. Now you might say, hey, Mia, I want to dismantle my universals first so that so that I can work my nested subproofs in quicker fashion. Well, you could certainly do that, right? You could move into line 3 and dismantle. You could do it after line 4 too if you want, or sorry, line 5 too if you want. If you do it within these triple nested subproofs, then you'll have to do it twice. So you might as well do it outside the nested sequences starting at lines, respectively, lines, what are now lines 6 and 9. What did I do? Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Thoughts. This should look a bit familiar to you, yeah? Hold tight, please. Remember we talked about the parallel subproofs, right? So we're going to be doing, making the same moves that we made in the nested sequence from 12 to 16. While I'm doing this, I'd like you guys to think about just how much work you've done such that you're working in these what are triple nested subproofs, right? And I know you see where we're going and you anticipated where we're going. Remember though, we want to make sure that you're doing more than following along. You're anticipating, right? Because if you're following along but not anticipating, then you might have a bit of struggle with how you're supposed to set things up and then move through your proof. So what we want to make sure we're doing is anticipating so that as you are working, you know how to set up and execute the sequences. All right, so, I thought we had done this already. I thought we had set up universal intro. So let me, okay, I know the font is small, but I want to get it all in a single window. Thoughts? How many are comfortable given a thumbs up? Woo! Awesome, guys. If there's any question, problem, confusion, remember, I'm here to help. We also have our super awesome embedded course tutor, Lindsay. So please, please, please don't be shy about seeking help. And in the meantime, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope I'll see you guys on Tuesday, if not before.